Sergio, when you're ready.
Thank you, Helen. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Very early morning for you.
Yes. My question is maybe two in one. The first one, how I don't seem to recognize when I'm rejecting something. I might feel relaxed and the emptiness, the noumenon.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get these thoughts about, for instance, work, or your boss look at you somewhat angry, and then the stories start to come in.
Mm-hmm.
And fear comes into the body, and so I don't realize that as the fear comes into the body, or these thought stories about work, I don't seem to know that that's my resistance.
And it happens very gradually, doesn't it? It's so gradual. It sneaks back in with just maybe even a happy thought. I'm just empty and I'm free. And then I have this positive thought that feels good. And then before I know it, the thoughts have just successively gone, down and down. And before I know it, I'm really contracted and fearful. And
right. And then I don't realize that. And then on the other hand, how could I merge the two ends of the spectrum, as you were saying to Elaine, into loving and acceptance? Okay, this is the fear.
mm-hmm.
So how to embrace it, how to for one moment recognize that I'm rejecting something, that I'm not accepting it because I have this resistance, and on the other hand, how to see, okay, this is just a baby, and pamper it and love it. And yeah,
so it's really good, and it seems to be the whole topic of today's satsang. In fact, this whole week is that. So if you notice, let's say we did a deep meditation here in satsang, and you came out of that meditation like, oh, everything's fine, everything's fantastic, and then by the time you've got to work or got through to lunchtime at work, you stop and you check in and you feel that your body's really feeling quite terrible, contracted, maybe this anger or fear, like you were saying. In that moment, there really seems to be two, doesn't there? There really, how I was feeling when I came out of satsang, and then I felt so loved and accepted by everybody and all of that. And then this is a very different experience I'm having in my lunch hour or whatever is going on. And for me, it took a real sincere, honest look at how I was handling when that contraction happens, when some thoughts got a hold of me and I've gone into this lower frequency, and it's been going on long enough that I haven't realized. Maybe it's been hours, maybe it's been days, sometimes weeks before I realized that I'd lost this peace, seemingly lost this peace and acceptance. The one thing that happened every time when I noticed how my body was feeling was blame, some blame. I should not have let that happen. I should have been more vigilant. I should have been paying attention more. I should have been checking in more. You get the idea, right? Like kind of like we were talking about with Elaine.
Exactly.
Yeah. And those thoughts really seem to make sense, because I had this idea that by checking in more, by being more vigilant, that was how I stopped that happening. This losing of this beautiful high place where I went back into a deep identification with illusion as a separate being. That by being more vigilant, checking in, all of that. So the blame thoughts were really accepted and really valued until I began to see that that just wasn't working. That I could check in 10 minutes after satsang from a place of just wanting to see how my body's feeling, and that would be effective. Or I could check in 10 minutes after satsang from, I really must be vigilant. I shouldn't let this, and that would be ineffective.
Right. Okay.
So I was doing all this vigilance, checking in, trying to, how am I feeling now? How am I feeling now? But it was coming from this very low place of, I'm not doing good enough with this. I'm not up to par here. I'm not who I need to be here. And actually, when I really started to embrace that was the issue. Not that I'd picked up some fear, not that my boss had looked at me wrong, not that I've run out of money again, not that I'm feeling some real contraction in my body. It's what am I doing with the fact that that's happened? How am I holding that in my consciousness? And
Right.
I began to really practice, if it's happened again, it's happened again. That's all. So loving acceptance of, so I've gone into illusion again. So what? Because the opposite of that was, I'm doing it again. Why am I still doing it again? Why is this still going on? Why can't I seem to hold on to peace? All of those self-blaming. It's impossible to come back to peace when we're blaming ourselves about anything, really. Even holding on to peace. So at whether it's 2 minutes, 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks after, when you realize, oh, I'm really back in it again. I'm back in this illusion again. What do you do then? Pop quiz. What do you do right now? So, and I noticed this knee-jerk response, this reflexive, something really has gone wrong here. This is something that's my fault. I've done this wrong. You get a sense of it?
Yes. I see.
And how would the self, okay, for the last 2 weeks, I've been completely oblivious to where I'm at. I've just completely gone into this illusion. I've been living it, having a miserable time for the last 2 weeks, or 2 minutes, 2 hours, whatever, 2 years sometimes for me. Just what would the self do with that? It would say, oh, well, that wasn't pleasant. That was extremely unpleasant, but it happened. Can't change it. It just happened. I prefer it didn't, but it refused to go into any blame about it.
Okay.
And then somehow there was more power in the body, more power in the mind, more light there to catch it after 2 hours rather than 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then an hour, and then half an hour, and then 2 minutes. And then eventually, I'm doing it right now. I'm just about to go off with this thought train, because the energy of self-blame is just depleting the life force in the body so much that you can't see it happening. You literally cannot see it coming until you feel so terrible that then you notice. And you've usually had some experience that mirrors it, your boss is really cross with you that day or something.
Yeah. Okay.
So not that thing itself, but how you're handling it. Where are you handling it from? Who are you doing it as? And what would an awakened being say to you if you got lost in illusion again? Would they say, you really shouldn't have done that? Why weren't you paying more attention? All the things we say to ourselves, they'd be like, okay, so it happened. It wasn't fun. It wasn't pleasant, but it doesn't change who you are and what you are, does it?
Definitely not. It doesn't.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Terrific.
Did that get both of them? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you. Wonderful.